Discovering the past is an art that many civilizations try to grasp to better get an understanding of themselves and their world. But for many people, the past is subjective. What do they mean by the past? Is it the past of their world? The past of their nation, their land, their family? The mere talk of history is such a subjective term. The shinobi clans will do their best to archive the history of their clan, their leaders and their accomplishments. The Kage will try to archive the past of their village, from its foundation to the present day. The daimyo will do the same for the history of their nation. More advanced scholars will go further, to a past so muddy that they are sometimes unable to tell the difference between truth and myth. In the case of one very special 13-year-old boy, his history was important for all aspects. In order to begin this tale, we must first begin with the man who shaped the multiverse as we know it. A man named Otsutsuki Hagoromo. He was born to a woman who ate the fruit of the god tree, and as such became a goddess over the universe, a woman known as Kaguya. After defeating his tyrant mother with the help of his brother to seal the ten-tailed beast, Hagoromo began his true work in shaping the multiverse. With the help of the inner ability known as chakra, he began the practice of ninshu and spread it to his followers in order to attain peace. It was no wonder that Hagoromo became known as the savior, a god amongst men, the sage of the six paths. But before he became this, he was aware that he needed to have an heir to continue his work. Before disappearing forever, he gathered all his sons and daughters. Because of his immense and at times unstable power, only 2 of his sons managed to get a substantial if not complete part of his power. Ashura and Indra. Indra, the oldest, inherited his eyes. The Sharingan was the precursor to his Rinnegan, but Indra was much too sheltered to experience the pressure necessary to advance to the ringed eyes his father had. Ashura, the younger one, inherited his father's body, and the special chakra that came with it. A battle took place, one that eventually ended in Ashura's favor, but their families would forever be locked into a battle of not only men and power, but of ideals. Ashura's Senju clan and Indra's Uchiha clan. It is unknown for how much both clans fought each other, but they eventually managed to stop when the prodigies of both clans fought against each other. One was a man named Senju Hashirama, leader of the Senju clan. The other was named Uchiha Madara, leader of the Uchiha clan. Once best friends, they became bitter rivals and fought numerous times until Hashirama's dream of a shinobi village was agreed upon. Hashirama and Madara's new alliance did not last. Soon, it devolved once again into the ages-old feud between the heirs of the sage's sons. A feud that seemingly ended in a lonely valley at the edge of Hai no Kuni, land of fire. The fierce battle ended in Hashirama's favor, with Madara thought dead. But Madara did not die, he lived. Crippled but very much alive, he crawled through pain, wounds, and sorrow. He survived. Near death, he encountered a blonde woman before he managed to pass out. She was a nurse for a nearby village. Tall, with bright, spiky blonde almost yellow hair, and sparkling blue eyes. These traits were more commonly found in the village of Kumagakura and the land of lighting than in Konoha. You were lucky to live. A few more minutes without medical attention and you would have died, Namikaze Haru had said to him. Indeed, even with his powerful body it took several weeks for Madara to be fully recover inside of Haru's forest house. She had been a medic before, her parents killed during the endless wars that plagued the nations for millennia. Haru's family indeed originated from Kaminari no Kuni, and she sported the blonde hair and blue eyes that were characteristic of a sector of the population from the northern country. Madara found her optimism to be sickening. He had been a man that had seen the worst of humanity, all of his family and loved ones had been stripped from him. With loneliness, came the hatred that burned so brightly on all Uchiha, a hatred that he thought could never be abated. So, it seemed a mystery even to Madara just how he managed to fall in love with such a woman. After he recovered, he did not leave, his pride would not allow him to simply receive medical care without compensation. Knowing that she needed help with local rogue shinobi thugs, Madara decided to stay and defend the young woman that had saved him from death. Years later, she was pregnant with his child. Madara felt a little guilty of the fact. He was older than her by quite a margin. He believed that Hashirama may have already have grandchildren by the time he conceived with Haru. Still, the young woman was ecstatic as she waited for her young child to be brought into the world. Madara would never see her give birth. One day, as he was returning from the nearby village, he found only the remains of their home, burned down by brigands. Filled with loss and hatred, Madara did not see the evidence that pointed towards Haru's survival. Instead he tracked down each and every one of the Nukenin and killed them. He then remembered his thoughts when Izuna was killed, the overwhelming grief of losing your loved ones. He retired from all life and began enacting his plan. A plan where he could live with Izuna and Heru, a plan to rid the world of war, hate, and sorrow. A world where there would be no losers. Unbeknownst to him, Heru was eventually found by Konoha Shinobi before she managed to give birth. She died bringing her son into the world. The last words from her mouth was the name that she would give him, Minato. He would grow to become the fourth Hokage, marrying the hidden great-granddaughter of Senju Hashirama and Uzumaki Mito. Her name was Kushina, and together they would have a son. The first person in history to have both Senju and Uchiha blood. Where Ashura and Indra fought against each other, and their descendants continued to war for millennia. Minato and Kushina loved, and their love would produce a son. The first person in history to have both Senju and Uchiha blood since the sage himself. His name is Uzumaki Naruto. Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed fox. Pain. Naruto had never felt pain such as the one he had been experiencing now. None of his previous fights had prepared him for such an overwhelming feeling at that moment. Not when he had stabbed himself in his hand during his first mission, or his fights with Kiba, Neji or Gaara. Not even when he managed to defeat Kabuto. The pain he felt as his best friend's hand entered so close to his heart gave him pain on a scale that was incomparable to those previously. He could feel it in his body, causing agony with every little movement it made. But it was not only the fist shoved into Naruto's chest that caused him such suffering, it was the fact that the person who was doing it to him was his best friend, Uchiha Sasuke. Who had used his Chidorian assassination technique in order to stop Naruto from returning him to Konoha. Naruto had grown up hated, ignored, resented. He saw every other person his age with his or her parents, saw the joy in their eyes as they called for the ones they loved, all of them except him. Who had no parents or loved ones to go back to at home. Haruka had been there for him, but at the end of the day it was not the same. He did not think that there was anyone who could truly know what it was like except for Sasuke, who had also no parents to go back to. That's why the betrayal hurt so badly, a betrayal from the boy he considered to be his best friend, Sasuke. From the pain, a new sensation starting welling up in him. It took some time for Naruto to realize that this was anger. Anger at the betrayal, anger at the pain, anger at his best friend. A familiar feeling came with the rage. One of a violent chakra courtesy of the giant nine-tailed fox living up inside him, and it seemed to be directed straight at the dark-haired Uchiha in front of him. There was, however, something different that he perceived, something that he had never felt before, centered solely in his eyesight. The world seemed clearer, more evident than ever before. It was as if he had spent his entire life with blinders on and they were suddenly lifted. Inside of him another entity was similarly flabbergasted as to what his host was feeling. Kurama's reaction to the matter, however, was far more perturbed than Naruto's. This chakra, it can't be Madara. The mighty nine-tailed fox, strongest of the nine Biju, certainly remembered the distinct malevolent chakra that the legendary Uchiha radiated when he put Kurama under his control with those hateful eyes. Eyes that the young Uchiha also had. Eyes that he now felt his host also had. How is this possible? How can Kushina's brat have those eyes? Kurama had felt even early on in Kushina and her spawn another chakra, similar to the other shinobi that had once been able to control him, Senju Hashirama. That had made more sense, however. It was known that his first host was the Shodame's wife, Uzumaki Mito. Kurama just assumed that Kushina may have been a hidden granddaughter of Mito's, hidden away on Yuzu no Kuni until it was time for him to be sealed into the younger Kushina. But Madara, how is it that he feels Madara's chakra? How is it that Uzumaki Naruto has the Sharingan? Is he an Uchiha? That's impossible. He shares none of the classic traits. I can understand if he is a Senju. Rumor has been that Kushina was a descendant of the Shode Hokage, but how could her brat have Uchiha blood? Was it his damned father, the fourth? Was he a secret Uchiha bastard? Impossible. Naruto was completely oblivious to his tenant's inner turmoil. The only thing he was focused on was the increasingly bewildered face of Sasuke. At first, he believed it was because of his rapidly healing wound, but then realized that he was not looking at the hole in his chest. He was looking directly at Naruto's eyes. Waha! How do you have those eyes? Sasuke demanded, his face conveying both shock and anger simultaneously. Naruto did not think about what he was saying. He did not have the mind for it. His rage clouded all judgment, and the first reaction he had to Sasuke was to send his closed fist straight to the Uchiha's face. The fight carried on for both of them, but it was but a blur to Naruto. His anger did not allow him to focus, it was just a flurry of fists and techniques. All the while, he felt his vision aiding him in ways he had never imagined. He started to see the world in a whole different way, perceiving movements that he would otherwise have missed previously. It did not do much, however. Sasuke was still his rival for a reason, and that seemed to be heightened very much by his now fully matured Sharingan. For every fist that he managed to connect, Sasuke evaded 4. Thankfully, he was also able to predict most of Sasuke's movements as well. He was confused. When he had accessed Kyuubi's chakra previously, it did not have this effect on his eyesight. It truly made him wonder what was happening. Is it a side effect? Am I getting more in tune with the Kyuubi? What is happening? He did not have to wait long for the answer. Sasuke made sure he knew exactly what new to him. Naruto, how do you have those eyes? Exclamation mark. How do you have the Sharingan? Naruto almost recoiled at the accusation. The Sharingan? He quickly looked down at the water, trying with some difficulty to gaze upon his reflection on the clear surface. Sure enough, instead of the usual sky that were the color of his eyes, a blood red with one tomoe on each looked back at him. There was no mistaking it, it was the Sharingan. The eyes of the Uchiha clan. What? How can this be? I'm not an Uchiha. I'm just an orphan. It's not possible. How can I have the Sharingan? He did not have any more time to ponder over his new eyes. Sasuke was once again upon him, a fire jutsu already being channeled. Kaiten Hasenkan no Jutsu, shouted Sasuke as he let out a volley of small fireballs, all aimed at him. Using his newly improved eyesight, Naruto managed to evade the torrent with ease. He suddenly remembered what was happening before the revelation. The fight with Sasuke and the anger that came with it. Power, unbridled power, came along with the anger. He could barely see the crimson chakra as it started to envelop him, giving Naruto a sort of cloak that had the likeness of a fox. His whiskers darkened, with a more pronounced appearance. Claws replaced nails and Sharingan eyes became even more feral. Naruto and Sasuke continued to fight, but he knew that it was time for it to come to an end. Standing on either side of the giant statues of Konoha's founders, they each prepared their signature moves. Sasuke's Chidori was powered by Orochimaru's cursed seal, while Naruto's Rasengan was enhanced by Kyuubi's chakra. They looked at each other. They were both enemies, rivals and friends. Each of them bridling with determination as they launched themselves forwards and connected their attacks. Chidori, Rasengan. The force of both jutsu meeting was immense, the sheer energy expanding beyond their hands and bodies, threatening to tear both young boys' bodies to pieces, yet they remained whole. The world seemed to shatter around Naruto, all reality that was ripping itself apart. Light surrounded him, all pain from the battle seemingly forgotten. Then Naruto knew no more as he lost all consciousness. Hagoromo had lost count of how many years had passed since he passed away. Surviving as a being of pure energy and thought, the Sage of the Six Paths had continued to observe the universe in its entirety with constant vigil. To many it would make little sense. His once godlike power was now gone. He could affect the world of the living in little capacity. The legendary sage even debated with himself as to the true necessity of his actions. Why does he continue to observe as his bloodlines died out? As the only two that still remain continue to fight each other ever since his two most gifted children began to fight over their father's legacy as the masters of Ninshu. What morbid fascination causes him to look as this holy path was transformed into a ninjutsu, a path that has brought death and pain to the land that once called him God? Otsutsuki Hagoromo finally admitted to himself that it was because he wanted to see if his actions made the world a better place. Some planets he had visited certainly ended up better than before. Technology advancements were achieved and the people led prosperous lives. But what of his home planet? The planet that he had saved from the clutches of his mother, Kaguya? War had followed, the descendants of Ashura and Indra never being able to forgive one another, constantly in a struggle of supremacy. Never seeming to mind as their children died, barely knowing what the joys of life can truly be. But there was one ray of hope, a child descended from both Ashura and Indra. It took thousands of years for their chakra to coalesce into one being, but it was finally together in the body of a 13-year-old shinobi. A shinobi that also carried Kurama inside him. The most difficult of his creations. It took so long, but he could recognize chakra similar to his own in the boy, even if he had not realized his true potential, one that would shake the universe to its core. Just like he had done so long ago. Now he saw as his young descendant was traveling across space, taking him from his birth planet of Gaia to another one. He still did not know where he would end or if he would ever return to Konoha and his planet or the challenges that he would face in the future. He only knew that this was far from the end for the young Jinchuriki. Was my world a failure or a success? Uzumaki Naruto, you will grow and prosper. I will keep my eyes on you. It will be up to you to decide. Blackness was the first thing Naruto saw when he opened his eyes, now once again blue in color. A pool of space that seemed to go on forever, like staring at a sky with no stars or moon. Lights did start to appear after a time, small dots that seemed to be getting larger and larger with each passing moment, eventually becoming immense when he got close enough to see. Colors then reigned his sight, like seeing thousands of suns and moons and planets from up close, going so fast that he never had the chance to see each of them fully. Naruto closed his eyes then, unable to keep seeing the things around him that threatened madness. It certainly helped, but he could still feel as he was floating, so fast yet so lightly across wherever he might be. The darkness started to clear even with closed eyelids. The figure of two orbs similar to eyes that peered straight into his soul. They certainly looked like eyes, but they were the oddest things he had ever seen. A light purple with rings and a ripple-like pattern, yet they were certainly eyes. The eyes gave way to a dark figure, but Naruto could not make any distinctions for the life of him, just the shadow of a person with weird eyes. Who are you? Thought the blonde as he continued to drift off. Uzumaki Naruto, you will decide, said the voice, and then Naruto knew no more of the figure as the world seemed to stop. When he finally landed, it was only his back. It was not as painful as he thought it would have been, but it still managed to hurt enough as to make him grunt through the exhaustion. Naruto could barely manage to open his eyes. Standing up was an even greater struggle. He felt just as bad if not worse than after his fight with Gaara. Still, he managed to struggle until he was once again on his 2 feet. He immediately started to take in his surroundings. He was in what seemed to be an alleyway, something that was familiar for him, but the overall feel of the place was completely alien. Looking at the buildings on either side of him, Naruto saw that they were immense. Never had he seen an architecture so industrial and so tall. Taking the first steps was even harder, but eventually managed to get himself out of the alleyway to this new place he suddenly found himself in. The blonde Jinchuriki barely managed to take a quick step back, narrowly avoiding what seemed to be a high-speed cart rolling across the street. Naruto quickly took a look to see that the gray pavement was filled with these strange carts that seemed to be emitting lights from the front and small red lights from the back. There seemed to be no horses or men that propelling the vehicle, seemingly moving out of their own accord. He did see that there were people inside of them, apparently controlling them in some way or another. One of the strange metal carts, yellow in color, made a noise at him. The driver started to talk to him, but Naruto did not understand any of the words being said. After looking at each other strangely, the man gave just him a dirty look and sped away forwards. The people walking around him were also giving him strange looks. Naruto was already used to being stared at with disdain, but these looks seemed to convey more curiosity rather than contempt. The people themselves were also using clothes that looked completely alien. They did not seem like shinobi, and the civilians that Naruto was used to seeing used more formal clothing. Looking at some of the women, they wore clothes that most non-shinobi would consider scandalous. Some of them started to talk, but once again he did not understand. Naruto tried to communicate with them, but likewise, he got confused looks. He heard the word Japan being mentioned more than once. Between the people speaking, the metal carts blaring, the masses walking about, and the stores shouting orders, Naruto had never heard so much noise in his entire life. How is anyone able to concentrate? What is this place? Thought Naruto with increasing panic. I have never seen things such as these. There are lights everywhere. I can't understand what anyone is saying. Another thought then came to him, however. He was in a foreign place, maybe even a foreign village. It would not be long before a shinobi force came to look out for him. Still wearing his Konoha headband, he imagined that he would make a tempting target. Thinking quickly, Naruto decided to step back into the alleyway, far from the people and the attention. Perhaps a bird's eye view of the R would help him regain his bearings? He looked at one of the large buildings and quickly ran over to it, channeling chakra to his feet in an attempt to climb the large structure. He did not get more than 5 steps before the control over his chakra went haywire and caused him to fall flat on his back. Shit, what happened? Naruto thought. He hadn't had this much trouble with his chakra control, not even when Orochimaru had messed with the fox's seal on his stomach. He quickly tried to make a few clones, only to find out that he could barely make a single one. Is my chakra gone? Have I lost some of my reserves thanks to the battle? No. Naruto could still feel his immense and powerful chakra, but it was unrestrained and raw. He was unable to mold it enough to use it. Briefly, he wondered if it was because it had increased or had been altered in some way. The orange-clad Jinchuriki did not have time to ponder for long. Immediately he started to hear a high-pitched blaring sound coming from all directions, followed by what seemed like even bigger black metal carts blocking all exits of the alley. From the carts, armored men started to pour out, quickly forming a perimeter and encircling Naruto. They were all clad in black and they were carrying strange devices that were pointed directly at him. The blue-eyed shinobi did not know exactly what they were, but his training told him that when something was pointed at him, it was a threat. One of the men started to shout at him, once again in the strange language that he could not decipher. Naruto tried to speak out. "Hey, what's the big idea here?" he shouted. To his surprise, one of the armored men actually started to talk back to him. "Freeze. Put your hands in the air and don't move. If you don't comply, we will take action," shouted the man, albeit with some difficulty. It seemed as if his speech was broken on some areas, almost like a 5-year-old trying to speak words that he did not fully understand. Naruto thought for a moment. These men were already threatening him and seemed to be extremely hostile. They were no doubt intending to take him prisoner. If that happened, then who knew what the leaders of this village would do to him? Quickly, Naruto passed his hand over his shinobi pouch, remembering that most of his equipment fell from it during his fight with Sasuke, but there were still a couple of smoke bombs left. He made his decision. Before the men could react, Naruto threw a couple of smoke bombs on the ground and once again ran towards the large building. The orange-clad shinobi concentrated really hard on his chakra control. This time he successfully managed to start running on the vertical surface like he was used to. Every step seemed like agony, exhaustion once again creeping onto him. Naruto's mind couldn't help but start to have doubts if he would be able to reach the top without his chakra control once again failing him and causing him to fall down to the mercy of the hostiles below him. To his great relief, Naruto managed to reach the top of the building and nearly collapsed from the immeasurable fatigue but managed to keep his eyes open. His body did not react for a couple of minutes, falling face down on the floor of the rooftop. The young shinobi wanted to drift away to blissful sleep, but knew he could not do so. He needed to stay alert in case they followed him. Naruto regained his bearings and once again stood up, carefully peering over the edge to see just where exactly he was. He was completely struck at the sight that greeted him. The place seemed endless. Lights from buildings covered Naruto's entire view. Konoha never had this much activity at night, yet this village, if it could be called as such, did not seem to sleep. The sounds never ceased. Thousands of the metal carts were going from one place to another. The whole thing seemed almost like an ant-hive that Shino would study in detail. Just where exactly am I? Unknown to Naruto, as he gazed upon his surroundings, there were forces that were already well aware of his presence and were currently on the hunt for this new strange arrival. 20 minutes previously. "Report," commanded the voice of what seemed to be a well-built middle-aged man. Aside from his imposing physique, the most notable traits were the gray hairs on each side of his head and an eye patch covering his left eye. "Sir, we detected a strange energy source of massive proportions concentrating on Hell's Kitchen. Our readings were off the charts," responded a rather tall young woman with dark hair and brown eyes. This was Maria Hill, a recent addition to the organization known as SHIELD. She was currently reporting to the director of said organization, Nicholas Fury. "What is the assessment, Agent Hill? Is this an extraterrestrial weapon?" asked the grizzled commander. Maria shook her head. "Not as far as we know. There was no damage to the surroundings. Satellite images point towards an individual." "A person? You mean an alien?" questioned Fury. "That's exactly what it seems," responded Maria. Nick Fury pondered the information for only a couple of seconds. SHIELD's main occupation was to combat threats to the entire world, whether they were domestic or extraterrestrial. Looking at the young agent, he gave his orders. "Assemble 3 strike teams and bring the subject back to headquarters for questioning. If it is hostile, the use of force is permitted, but I want it alive. Move out." Away from the giant city of New York, there were a few other individuals that were aware of the new arrival. They did not have the technology of SHIELD. But with a single device, they were able to pinpoint the exact location. Professor Charles Xavier was in deep underground as he was strapped to Cerebro. He did not have to concentrate very hard to find the source of the disturbance. It was akin to finding a bright light in a dark room. The power was immense, if uncontrolled. Not even Jean had released such a presence when he found her for the first time when she tragically awakened her own powers. Cerebro had not yet picked up the particular powers this young mutant, but he imagined that with the proper training, they could flourish to make him or her one of the strongest mutants currently on Earth, which meant that there would be others who would seek him out. Organizations and people such as Magneto or the government would be drawn to his power like moths to a flame. Xavier knew he needed to contact this young mutant and keep him hidden from people who would seek to destroy or corrupt him. He heard a metal door hiss open and felt a familiar presence behind him. "Logan," said Xavier, "good evening. How are you?" "Nothing new," came the gruff tone of Logan, better known as Wolverine. "What did you manage to pick up?" "Even I felt the presence, and I'm no telepath. It's male, that's for sure. Young, scared, powerful. I don't think he is from this world." "How has Jean?" responded Xavier. "She's sleeping now. Storm took her to bed so she can rest," said Wolverine. "What are his powers?" "Good. Get the Blackbird ready and call Ororo. We must get to him before anyone else. With this amount of power, he is a danger to not only others but also himself," ordered Xavier as he unhooked himself from Cerebro. As for his abilities, still unknown. There seems to be some kind of energy manipulation, but Cerebro was not clear on it. What does seem to be the case is that we may be dealing with a telekinetic as well as a telepath. That's why we must go to him as fast as possible. It won't be easy. Chuck Shield may already be after him. I'm sure other government agencies have caught wind of him now. Reed Richards and Stephen Strange won't be far behind, and then there's Magneto. I will deal with Eric if it comes to that. But you are powerless against him. If there are any others that try to harm him, then you can intervene, but leave Magneto to Ororo and myself," ordered Xavier as they both started to make their way to the ground level of the large mansion. "Storm is still too young, barely older than Jean. Pitting her against Magneto is a bad idea," countered Logan. "She will have me aiding her. We don't want to defeat Eric anyway, just distract him enough so that you can convince this new mutant to join us," insisted Xavier with a tone of finality. "I am not the best with pep talks, Chuck." "That's your area," Logan grumbled but eventually hurried back to follow Xavier's requests. Not even 10 minutes had passed before a fully outfitted Wolverine, Storm and Professor X were aboard the X-Jet, ready to greet this potential new recruit. Back to Naruto. Naruto was still looking at the great expanse of lights until he first heard it. Thoughts noise like he had never heard before, all of them in this strange language. It seemed as though everyone was talking at once, pounding into his head. It hurt so much that he almost did not hear the whirring sound that was fast approaching the rooftop. What is happening? Why is there so much noise? Where am I? Did I die? Is this hell? Thoughts blurred by Naruto as much as the noise. Eventually the wind caused by another flying object managed to snap him out his trance. "This is the United States government. Keep your hands in the air and surrender peacefully or we will respond with force," came a loud voice, distorted by a speaker. Shut up, leave me alone," thought Naruto as he impulsively thrust his palms at the flying object. To his shock, it seemed as if it tumbled lightly, going out of control momentarily before regaining its composure. Naruto concentrated fully on the flying transport. He tried to mold enough chakra to conjure more clonus and be able to distract it enough to escape. His chakra control had other plans, however, and once again was met with failure. Kyuzo, why now of all times? Just as the object was getting closer, it suddenly stopped, much to Naruto's confusion. His instincts told him to look behind him and he did so. Naruto looked over at a tall man, outfitted with a costume that was both red with traces of purple. A metal helmet covered his face. The most shocking thing, however, was the fact that this man seemed to be floating on air. The man had one hand in front of him, pointed at the flying apparatus. He started to move it on one direction and the black vehicle started to move along the path that the hand was being pointed against. "He's controlling it," Naruto realized as he watched in awe. The figure then propelled the vehicle far away, crashing it against another one of the buildings. Naruto saw that the people inside barely had enough time to jump out of the metal machine in order to not be caught in the crash. The orange-clad shinobi turned his gaze back to the figure, seeing that he was extending his hand over to him, as if welcoming a new ally towards his side. He did get rid of them. Maybe I should go with him, but the way he almost killed those people, there may have been innocents involved. Think back on what Kakashi-sensei said. Don't trust anyone when alone. Naruto's hand went back to his pouch. Only one smoke bomb left. He needed to make it count. With blinding speed, Naruto threw the bomb at the floor and without thinking, he jumped from the precipice onto the floor below. The blonde channeled what remaining chakra he could to his feet, bracing his body for the landing. Yet, even with his shinobi body, the impact of the landing was far greater than he was used to. As if his chakra-enhanced body, which could withstand damage that could easily kill a civilian, had suffered a major downgrade during his travel. He would need to get it back into shape and fast. Lower chakra control, hearing voices. What's next? Dropping smack dab in the middle of traffic apparently. The vehicles started to make beeping sounds, one after the other. He lay in the middle of the street. It must have made quite the sight, seeing a blonde-haired bloodied boy dropping from the sky and landing with no apparent damage. No time to think, I have to get away fast. Go where nobody can find me. His first instinct was to lose himself in the crowd, but with his chakra control he would not be able to do a good enough henge. He needed to put as much distance between both the armed men and the creepy floating dude. Naruto instantly saw another alleyway and quickly made his way to it, hoping to lose them in the massive streets that seemed to be endless in this giant village. Luck seemed to be on his side for once. After exiting the alleyways, Naruto saw a large park that did not seem to have that many people. Hiding was a specialty of his. You do not learn to run away from the Konoha shinobi after pranking them and not get a few tips on concealment. These people did not seem to be shinobi, so it would be far easier to avoid them. He could not say the same for the creepy floating dude, however. He would need to see if his ruse was successful. After using his last smoke bomb, Naruto did not have many chances left to escape, at least not in his current state. He needed to rest and assess the situation so that he may find a way to get back to Konoha. A gust of wind was the first indication that he was still being followed. Groaning, he briefly turned back to see who was coming next. She was in the sky, and by she, Naruto meant one of the most beautiful girls he had ever seen. The woman had dark skin and white hair. The blonde Jinchuriki had heard that the people native to Kaminari no Kuni had a similar skin tone, as well as the hair color. Am I in Kumo? There's no way their village is this different from us. Beauty was one thing. Naruto had seen beautiful girls and women before Ino, Tenten, Kurenai-sensei, Gaara's hot sister, the psycho snake lady, Koyuki Hime, but none of them dressed like this one. She was wearing all black. The material seemed to shine. It was skin-tight, showing her figure perfectly. There was a cape, a headdress, and thigh-high boots. Those seemed to be perfectly normal. It was the rest of the outfit that really showed her off. It was like one of those racy swimsuits some daring girls would wear, only this one covered a little more and were connected with a large ring that secured them together. Who knew Kumo shinobi dressed like this? Ero Sennin would have a field day. The black-skinned woman started to descend towards Naruto's direction. He instantly went to pick up a kunai he still had left but did not brandish it yet. She seemed harmless enough. There was even a small, warm smile upon her lips, but Naruto knew that this could very well be a ploy to get him to lower his defenses. She appeared to be only a few years older than him but was even taller than Tsunade. The beautiful woman seemed to perceive his uneasiness and immediately showed her hands in a pacifying manner, as if trying to display peaceful intentions. She then started to speak and once again he did not understand what she was saying. I'm sorry, I can't understand what you are saying. I need to go by, said Naruto with tinted cheeks at seeing the woman up close. He then promptly turned away and ran as fast as he could. Orochimaru looked on as the ragged blonde ran away from her, speaking a tongue that she vaguely recognized as Japanese. He seemed panicked, but practiced, like he was used to danger. She quickly concentrated on the professor's telepathic connection. I've made contact with him. Logan, you need to speak to him, communicated Storm. HMPH, I told you, I'm no good with pep talks, responded Wolverine. You are the only one who can. This boy speaks Japanese, you're the only one I know that knows how to speak it. It was Xavier's voice that interrupted. How was he, Ororo? Was he well? Asked the professor. Blonde with blue eyes. His clothes were torn, like he just came out of a battle. He was bloodied and bruised. There was a hole close to his heart, but it seems to have healed. He looked really tired though, about to collapse, answered Storm. She did think that the whisker marks on his cheeks were a little cute but decided to keep that information to herself. You said he speaks Japanese. Does he have any relation to Shiro Yoshida? Asked Wolverine. Chuck. You said he just appeared suddenly and with no explanation. How is it that he speaks Japanese? I do not know, but Ororo is right. You are the only one that can communicate with him, responded Xavier. Fine. But you tag along, Storm. I don't want to scare the kid away. Storm waited for Wolverine to come to her location, trying as hard as she could to keep a track on the runaway blonde. It was hard. He seemed to have a knack for hiding himself. Here I am, let's get this kid fast before Magneto catches up, said Wolverine as he finally caught up to her. Ororo felt a presence behind them however, and both of them immediately turned back to see the master of magnetism himself floating above them. Too late, stated Ororo dryly. Step aside, commanded Magneto, his face hidden away in that dark helmet which blocked all forms of telepathy. Wolverine glared at the man. What do you want, bub? I suggest you leave now before the government picks our trail once again. I will not allow you to take another young mutant away and feed him Charles' pathetic ideas, stated Magneto with contempt. You will step back and allow me to teach the boy his rightful place on this earth. The rightful place of all mutants. You will not poison him with foolish dreams of cooperation with the humans. You know not what you speak, responded Storm. Do I not? Is he not being pursued by the humans at this very moment? What do you think they will do to him? Drawled the master of magnetism. Will they treat him as another human? He asked, anger evident in his voice. No, I seem to take the hint easily enough. Ororo Monroe, said the dark-skinned girl. Then the bald one said his name as well. Charles Xavier. The blue-eyed Jinchuriki gave a weak smile. Naruto Uzumaki Naruto. And with that, Naruto fell face first into Ororo's arms and drifted off into blissful unconsciousness. And guys, this is the end. I hope you enjoyed. See you next time. Disappears in a vortex of energy.